Well, fucking you. Yeehaw. I think it worked. Is it working? You guys hear me? All is well? I can see me moving. I see people. All that other stuff. Welcome to the live chat. Welcome. Add more. Yeah, it's okay. Thanks, guys. And there we go. So I took a much needed week off there. Sorry if you all missed me. I'm sure you got over it. As I talk sometimes about consequences for breaking rules and doing stuff I'm not supposed to do or saying things that I'm not supposed to say. Let's say over the course of the last week, I've paid a few. So whatever. Just another day in paradise. Been hearing from a lot of people who are pretty pissed off about the last couple, which is pretty funny. I don't know why people are getting mad. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit kind of in this community, and all I'm really trying to do is bring your attention back to what matters. If somehow that's a problem with you, then I wonder what exactly your intention on listening to all this information is. Do we not want to live better lives? Do we not want to make some sense of things? I think that we do. So that's what I'm trying to do, bring focus back to what matters. Today, we're going to play a little game where we talk about reptilians. Not just Draco, reptilians in general. Ever since I was kind of a kid, I've had this ability to talk to animals. I've kind of freaked people out with it at times, especially snakes. I can remember the first time I was in a pet store with my ex-wife. We were walking by this like wall of snakes, and I had kind of stopped and I decided I wanted to say hello. So I did, and my wife found me, and they were all kind of, had come to the edge of their aquariums, I guess, tanks, and were, looking at me almost like I was teaching an audience or something like that. And she kind of freaked out. But I find reptiles a lot easier. I find with mammals, because they've got more emotion, they're a little bit more clouded when it comes to connecting to them telepathically. There's a lot more defense up, I guess you would say. Whereas I guess the very matter-of-fact nature of a reptilian kind of leaves them, they're very confident, right? So they're not typically scared of much. So they have a lot less guarding up, a lot less protection up, and are typically pretty fucking curious. So they kind of keep those channels wide open. Yeah. I relate what I'm going to get to that, buddy. Anyways, types of reptilians. So we typically lump all of these together, but there are obviously, it's a fucking massive universe. There's a lot of different types, just as much as there's different types of humans and different versions of the same type of human on different planets and whatnot. The same thing would be true for reptilians. We tend to think of them all as bad because we tend to just kind of view the animal reptile on our planet as being kind of cold and maybe dangerous in a lot of cases. And so that kind of gets projected onto, a species that would be reptilian in nature. Makes kind of sense, but we don't need to do that. And also because we look at our world and we hear, hey, like it's being controlled by reptilians, which is true, was true. And those reptiles are very bad. So, but again, even within that, you can't say that they're all bad. Like I've pointed out that not every Draco is of like mind. They don't all follow. Just because they were born of that nature doesn't mean That's the path that they chose to follow. We all get to make choices, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone listening to me right now was born into a situation that they didn't follow directly, right? You made your own choices. You maybe had parents you didn't agree with, but came to make up your own mind about things and have your own experiences, and that's true for every form of life. You see it even within animal packs, where some of them just don't follow the group, and so this overgeneralization that we tend to do when it comes to reptilians or ET species is pretty dangerous. I mean, I can point out human variants that are fucking terrible. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about one later. And they're just as much human as you or I are. They've just made a bunch of shitty choices that turned out to be, well, made them terrible. So again, you don't have to, just because like maybe a reptilian entity approaches you doesn't mean that you necessarily have to assume that it's part of the dark side, so to speak. But even within, you say the Draco, over time, some of them just change their minds. They start to feel differently. A lot of that happened when they started interacting with our version of human, because they started to see our emotion and the breadth and width of it. Also see what we were capable of in terms of metaphysical abilities that they have, but they compartmentalize differently than we do. Hopefully I can get back to that. And so they learned a new aspect of why it was all possible from watching us. And that's just a example of how, none of this is stagnant and things change over time. And I mean, you can even have, Sauron from fucking Lord of the Rings give that guy 1,000 years. Maybe he changes his mind. Maybe he starts to feel differently. Maybe he falls in love. I mean, we know the story of Darth Vader, right? Well, he wasn't always an asshole. Something made him go that way, so something can make you go the other way too. Always important to keep in mind. In terms of different types of reptilians, there's more than I know of. I've only interacted with a few. Main interactions have been with Draco, but there's some that I am aware of. Would say like there's a group from what we call like the Orion's Belt, or that particular constellation, that are fucking sweethearts. They're very nice, but they're not. Where I was going with this, I guess, is that the same can be true for any form of life on our planet. You can pretty much project all of them into a humanoid version of themselves somewhere. That's what's kind of the beauty, or one of the things that's not necessarily unique but special about Earth, is that we have all of these different life forms that kind of represent all of the different life forms throughout the cosmos. We ourselves are made up of all of them. So you can kind of look at, say, the difference between maybe a salamander. I don't know, maybe like a salamander is a reptile, a gecko and a snake, or even different breeds of snakes, and just imagine that there's probably different breeds of, say, dragons, and different breeds of, say, snakes, and everything else that have become, species that have their own planet and have their own civilizations and have come to their own forms of evolution. And they're all very different. I mean, some of them follow, it's kind of a common thing for them to have a structure that has a very hive mind type element to it, but that's not always the case. Some of them are like more spiritual than your typical fucking Christian evangelist, to be honest. So again, a lot of variants. And yeah, you can kind of look at the different life forms and see, I guess what I'm trying to wrap that up as is that as you look around at our planet, keep in mind that all of these different variations you see are a representation of what's out there in the cosmos. And just as much as you can have two cats that don't act the same, and two dogs that don't act the same, and two humans that don't act the same, you can have two Draco, you can have two Orion reptilians, you can have two Vril who don't act the same, have their own thoughts and whatnot, depending on the way that particular system goes. I've talked about the Draco and how they have different breeds, and once you get into like what they call like the royal bloodlines, or their bloodline races, the ones that aren't genetic creations, then you do have a lot of that variability where some of them are happy and some of them aren't. Fix the mic. What's going on with it, guys? I just got this thing because it was attached, and I thought that would cut down on some of the movement issues I've had before. I'll plug in another one if it's really fucked up. I'll go back through this next section and then I'll look. Hopefully you guys can actually hear me at least. Quite a bit of static. All right. Oh no, this might fuck everything up. I know what I'm looking for, but I don't know where I should be looking for it. Quite a bit of static. I don't think YouTube likes me. I'm starting to believe that. I tested all of this shit both times. All right, let's go into Draco specifically, just because it's I guess is the most relevant to us. Our control system comes from them, right? So maybe understanding why we have this inherent fear and connection to reptilians and mammals of different types would be important. The Draco created us with a mix of different ET races, their own very predominantly, but a bunch of other ones that they had collected over time. Draco are very, very much geneticists. They like to play, they like to experiment, and when they made us, they kind of made this big giant soup of things because they noticed what I was saying earlier, which was that this planet has all of these different life forms. This is why when we go through the gestation period, we actually, like in the womb, go through these different stages of, life on planet Earth. And that first one is very reptilian. And they call the R complex the reptilian brain for these reasons. But we were born on planet Earth. We were created on planet Earth. And any creation on planet Earth is directly influenced by Mother Earth. And despite the Draco's plan to make us maybe something less than we turned out to be, Mother had her own little finger in the pie, so to speak, and used what they were intending to do kind of against them. I don't know the best way to explain it. I guess they thought that by mixing all of these things that they knew how to control and manipulate in terms of different types of DNA, that would just make us that much easier to control and manipulate. But she added her own little element through spirit into that creation, and the end result is us, and we are pretty fucking awesome. I mean, we have this emotional spectrum that you're not going to find anywhere else. Trust me on that. Yes. One of the things that we have done, though, is lost kind of connection to her in the process of dealing with or learning to deal with this giant emotional spectrum. Once the Draco kind of figured out that that was there, they learned how to, they're masters of mind control, right? And they learned how to turn that against us. And so we ended up kind of turning off our abilities, and they helped with everything that they were putting around us as well. Kind of dumb that down to an extent so that we were a lot less, connected to her, and therefore not able to tap into the vast amount of information that we could otherwise. Because of that emotional spectrum, it's kind of like a bunch of different frequencies that can help you tune into different dimensions, so to speak, or frequencies, connect to them directly, and therefore we can gain information through all sorts of different types of interaction that maybe other species can't so much. We've just never really learned how to, we've never been given the chance as this particular version of human race to explore that and do so without someone there telling us what to make of it. We've never been able to make sense of it on our own because we haven't been given that chance. We've always had controllers. We've always had some type of, big daddy looking over our shoulders telling us where to go and what's important and what's not. And I think that if we took all of that away, then we would have to definitely go through a very challenging period of having to learn to manage all of these things for our own. But I do think that we're very much capable of it, and I look forward to seeing the day that that happens. A lot of the way that the Draco have been able to control us is by putting, mind control form programs in place in terms of religions and different structures and spiritual beliefs. Basically separating us from one-on-one connection from God and presenting the idea that, or God or source, presenting the idea to us that we needed some type of intermediary, such as a priest or a druid or whoever, and over time kept upping the ante on that until we got to where we are today, where a lot of people don't have any sort of connection to any of that. But it's still there. It's just, we have a lot of, I don't mean we, probably most of you listening to this would apply to, but most humans don't recognize those connections anymore because they've had their minds filled with that connection is fiction and that connection is bullshit and this is the truth and it's all just chemicals in your brain. Oh no, it's electrochemicals in your brain. Oh no, it's electromagnetic chemical. Oh, that would okay. Let's separate those things. See, this is the way that they've worked over time to keep us from just figuring this out on our own. And the Draco have used these structures that I've explained and other type of structures to do that. Even a lot of our hierarchy groups and whatnot, you even see it in like online Facebook groups where there's like the leader of the group or whatever. This is the kind of hierarchy that allows us to start to believe that we have to go through someone, we have to have some type of special information, some type of special training in order to access these things. The truth of the matter is we have to harness being human. We have to harness the way that our soul connects to these bodies and the way that these bodies have to deal with the emotional spectrum that they're capable of. Once we do that, collectively or individually, all that difficulty, all that programming that the Draco put in place starts to go away anyways. It's the same thing with like symbology. The more you educate yourself about symbology, if you were to follow someone like a Michael Tsarion and listen to a bunch of what he has to say, then you're going to start noticing it everywhere. And then once you start noticing it everywhere, that subconscious effect that it's been having on you starts to go away. And that's true for any of this that I'm talking about in terms of how these draconian systems work on our mind to keep us disconnected from source, essentially our higher self first and then source beyond that. And it's people like to say it's like some kind of situation where it's just been shut off, it's been dumbed down, it's been buried a little bit, but nothing like that can ever go away. Souls are too powerful. Draco know it too. That's why they influence even these movements with those type of ideas, to keep you, looking up to, can you please teach me the way, instead of, hey, if I just like really kind of go inward and really start to look at how I feel about things, then I might be able to, really figure all of this shit out for myself and not need, whoever to teach me. And another thing that they've done in doing that is try to make it so that it seems like you have to follow a very rigid system in order to achieve that goal. They're giving you the idea of the right-hand path and the left-hand path and all of these different things. And even the mystery schools themselves are a function of that, is to try and make it so that you feel like you can't figure this out on your own. You can't learn it on your own. But you can. It's very possible for you to just, figure it out. You might want to bounce ideas and concepts off of others. You might want to maybe listen to podcasts like this one in order to try and make sense of some of the stuff that's coming in. But ultimately, just as much as I can learn it, you can learn it, and everybody that you know can learn it. So putting yourself in this place where you feel like it's just gone from you, and the only way to fix it is if it's put back in schools and it's delivered to you on a platter. That's just laziness. That's the lack of taking responsibility that got humans in trouble with the Draco in the first place. I don't mean to be rude by saying that or anything, but it is. That's the kind of attitude that we often take because we're so fucking overwhelmed by all of these emotions sometimes towards a lot of different things in life, and this included. Different species of soul, like when you're talking about using other bodies, body swapping, driving clones, anything like that. The solar consciousness and the DNA of the body make a kind of bond like this. If you've seen Avatar, it actually kind of looks like that, the way they kind of interlock like this. And let's say there's 26 tentacles on this particular one, and there's only 13 on this one, then it's going to be really easy for you to lock in there. But let's say there's like 50 on this one, there's only 36 here, then you're going to have extra connections, right? And or not enough. It can work either way, depending on which way that goes. So a lot of what the bloodlines were put in place for was to make sure that the Draco had cars, human cars, that they could drive really well. And so that DNA, while they were trying to maintain those DNA structures, that's what it was all for, was to make sure that if, name your Draco general needed to jump into a human body or incarnate into a human body, and hold a position within the structure, then they could do that comfortably. Whereas if they came into a body like ours, the rest, I guess, it would be probably overwhelming for them because they don't like our emotions, right? And that's why they started breeding psychopaths. They started breeding empathy out of people and breeding different emotions out of people so that they could use those bodies to drive around on our planet and not have to deal with all that bullshit in their eyes that comes along with being human. So they're a little bit of bitches too, so anyways. A lot of what people think they're seeing when they're seeing shapeshifting is the fact that there's another species of soul driving that car. That's not a human. You're seeing it as it is. The frequency shifting a little bit, and then it looks like they're shifting and then shifting back. And that's also why they really pushed cloning on this planet, was so that they could not worry so much about continually breeding those genetics and keeping those bloodlines genetically pure. They could focus more on just creating a body that was perfect for them. So that's a lot of why cloning was important for them to introduce to the Illuminati, I guess, or the human element of this. Not all psychopaths are reptilian. I'm just saying that a psychopath's mind and body and DNA is a good match for a reptilian soul. Something that comes up a lot when dealing with any reptilian race seems to be this difference between logic and emotion. Most of them, it's not that they don't have feelings. It's that their emotions are very, very secondary to what they think they know or what they believe or what information is coming in. I talk in the blog about the trivium method. I'm not a great teacher of the trivium method because it's just kind of an inherent part of how I operate. There's a lot of good people out there to teach you that, but it's important to learn. The reptilian mind works that same way, but to an extreme, where because they're limited on their emotional capability, depending on the type of reptilian they are, those thoughts, those beliefs, those structures of mind dominate. Typically, when they do get to that second step of incorporating their feelings, it's like they're pretty much not even there, and then the actions are what they are because of that. That's why they would seem cold, or they would seem distant. It doesn't feel like talking to a human, if that makes sense. It just feels different. Their reactions are different. in all sorts of ways. They tend to be seem a lot more calm and calculated. You'll see that in a snake. They're very kind of calculated in their movements, and even just the way a snake moves, you're talking about billions of subtle little movements, and that's kind of, again, biology playing into its nature. But the difference you start to find is when I was talking earlier about how they start to change their mind over time, or things like that can happen. That's them picking up more emotion than thought, and that'll just kind of naturally happen if you're exposed to it too much. And that's why a lot of the more negative reptilian races, like say the Draco, definitely keep them separated from people like us. They're workers, they're soldiers. The ones that need to be functional, they don't get to know much about us. And they're, if you were in projects, they would be ordered, say, not to speak to you, and that's or to try and intimidate you and things like that. And that's why they typically come off like they do. So what's happening now is kind of, we're seeing, so the Draco were very powerful in all the ways that we consider magic to be. Things like fucking with us in the astral realm, things like moving body to body to mess with us, psychically messing with us, all of those type of things. They are really good at it. It's part of their power, and therefore it's part of their control structure when they're controlling a planet like they have with us. AI doesn't do that. AI does it through technological means. So about 200 years ago, when the Draco kind of started backing off and said that they were going to leave and gave everything back to the humans, that's why we kind of went, oh fuck. I mean the humans involved, and it's not even we, because it wouldn't be anyone listening to me right now. The humans involved kind of went, well fuck, well, how do we maintain all this control, because we're not that good at magic. We don't know how to maintain all of those structures that the Draco had maintained all of that time. We don't have that type of metaphysical power, if you will. Or at least we don't want to have to maintain the discipline in order to do so. So what do we do? Well, enter Red and enter AI and this dangling carrot of, hey, I can do it for you, right? And so what have we seen over the last 200 years? We've seen this rise in developments and technology and structure and infrastructure and all of these different things that now play into the systems that we now see kind of holding on to the planet. And especially today, as I'm recording this, because of what's going on in the world right now, we really do see that transition. And as I've been saying all along, the meaning of the purpose for that transition is because it's a lot easier for them to control technology than it is for them to control metaphysical energy and magic. It's a lot easier for them to keep us disconnected and create bullshit in our minds if they've got us plugged into these forms of technology. Whereas, and it would happen to anyone. It's kind of like if you take a pig, a domesticated pig, out of a pen and let it go in nature, it'll start to grow hair, it'll start to grow tusks, it'll revert back to being a natural pig within a few months. Humans would do the same thing. If you were to go drop yourself out in the middle of the woods with the skills to survive doing that, the lack of interaction with other people, the lack of interaction with the various mind control frequencies, not that they're not still there at some point, but you're a lot less. And the heightened interaction that you would have with nature and the rhythms and everything, you would become so in tune with that you would eventually, break out and forget all of that programming. So they don't want that. And so that's a lot of why they're driving this technological world and all this transhumanism, is because that's how the humans can maintain the control without having to be disciplined in their magic. And that's also how we can fight back, because we can become disciplined in our magic, and we can do all of the things that the Draco used to lead them to do that worked really, really well against us, together, not against them, but for us. And doing that individually, friends who live local to you who also practice magic, get together with them, set these intentions, perform these rituals, do these things for the good of our planet and each other and mom and all of those things. And they're beneficial, and that's what they don't want you to do, because that's part of why they want to separate us. That's why they want to stack us in boxes. That's why they want to, put fucking machines into us, is because it's not that they're afraid of what we would do with any of those abilities. They don't need to depopulate us. I've said this before. They're not afraid of us in that way. They're afraid of what would happen if we ever did separate enough from them to forget about them. We would be able to take it all back, and they don't want that. And, over the last 200 years, you've really seen it, specifically in the last 50 years. And, ever since then, the influence of red has been able to grow, because the humans who have the power, so to speak, the money and the positions of power, want control over us, and she offered it to them. So there you go. So now that we're done talking about reptiles, let's talk about humans a little bit, because it's important, and it plays on everything else I've said. Humans have the ability to be good and bad. People can be assholes, people can be great, they can go anywhere in between. It's all choices. Obviously, those choices have different factors that lead them to that choice that can be viewed as internal or external, but ultimately the choice is always an internal one. And we do have that power to, react properly to it. So, everything that we look for outside of ourselves is already within ourselves. All of that guidance, all of that power, all of that magic, all of that longevity, all of everything. It's all in there. We have this direct, connection to it all, because this is our planet. We are children of the mother, and we have all that ability. We have all that potential. But because we also have all of that potential, that can be manipulated in various forms. We see people do that to each other, and we know the control system is exactly doing that to us. It's playing on the parts of our nature that are good, and it's perverting them to make them bad. And it's where, your action and character really get shown when you have to make your choices. It's not so much in your quiet time when you can carefully think about things and feel things out and all of that, but in those moments when you have to act, you're triggered, you're there. That's when you're really kind of seeing your character. And when it comes to the humans who have been manipulated to do bad things to other humans, that's possible because those aspects are within us. All that light and all that dark is within us, and if the dark gets isolated, it can become a tool for people with bad intentions. And when I was talking earlier about the importance of us learning to master our emotional intelligence, that's a lot of why that's important, because the more aware we are of our darkness, the less they can use it against us and twist it, manipulate it, and make us act inappropriately or do bad things to each other or ourselves. Our planet obviously has a pretty fucking strong view of us. She's sacrificed a lot to allow us to even exist. Could have given up, could have shaken her shoulders at any moment. She hasn't. I think that means she sees our potential to climb out from underneath all of this, and that we will eventually get there. Yeah, our responsibility is to learn how to balance all of this energy. It's be the collection of souls within this human specimen example version that figured out without having to have someone holding our hands, without having to constantly fall back on crutches, without, giving up that power to someone else to come in and save us. Just, really embracing what we are and who we are and just enjoy it for what it is, learn how to manage it, learn how to channel that energy in such a way that you can create with it, as opposed to allowing it to break you down and self-destructing. It's not a lot of fun for any of us, right? I'm sure we've all been there. And that is our power. The reason why we reject technology the way we kind of seem to do is because we really do understand that, that connection to Mother is always there. We all feel it at some level all the time, whether we're conscious of it or not. And that's where that immediate rejection of technology kind of does come from, our gut reaction to it. And again, I've said, not all technology is bad, obviously, but yeah. So I think that kind of goes through everything I wanted to talk about on that particular topic. I had to quickly ignore the screen because there's a very unique troll this time. I'm used to trolls. Didn't expect that from you. So, how's it going, everybody? I'm going to smoke another bong, and then if you want to ask questions, I'll answer some questions for a little while. Hopefully, that'll answer enough questions that you can not worry so much about reptilians and just, start worrying about humans and being a human and how you most want to benefit or utilize that ability. And Draco are a form of dragon. Bitch, didn't know that one. All right, let's see if we have any questions. How do you think weed affect human emotions for better or for worse? Well, my experience with watching people and myself smoking marijuana is that it seems to affect different people differently. For some people, it can make them extremely happy when they're not really happy. Some people can make them really sad. So I think there's a lot of variant in that. Almost a universal thing is it tends to make you a little bit, people think of it as being paranoid, but it makes you very introspective. It makes you look at all your bullshit. And, this is where something like alcohol will typically make you not look at it. Weed will just bring it to your face and be like, hey, remember me? And that's why a lot of people experience like a feeling of paranoia or fear when they smoke marijuana. But like anything else, it's a tool. It's not for everybody. But you can experiment with all of the tools and find out what works for you, because you're special and unique, and that's okay. And when I get done with the main topic and you guys want to ask questions, it doesn't have to be on that topic. It can be on whatever it wants. So no worry about being off topic. What about people like Justin Trudeau? It baffles me too. He feels empty. I don't really know. I mean, I don't think in his case that's the case. Like, he seems very human to me, to be honest. I would imagine his life has been very controlled in a lot of different ways, and he's under a lot of different pressures, probably since birth, being born into that family. And I don't know. I don't see a reptile in him myself, and from my experience, I have no reason to believe that that would be true. But I kind of get what's leading to your question. There's a definite empty quality there, it seems. and his voice is almost computer-like. If you feel fear from smoking, then smoke more. That's good advice. Can we really trust the dragons even with good intentions against humanity? I have a feeling that they are tricksters in nature. And that's true for any of us, really. There's always the potential for a, dragon who comes from a very benevolent race to be a complete tyrant. It's just as possible for a human. It's part of the point is just not to generalize in that sense. It's better to learn to discern on an individual level. That's why it's good to learn things like psychology and how systems work through cybernetic systems and whatnot, is because it helps you learn and identify the patterns that tell you what people's intentions are. And like with anything, the proof is always in the results. So they can say all the right things, but if they're doing all the wrong things, it's pretty evident that what they're saying and what they mean isn't the same thing. And so when you're encountering anyone or anything like that, it just to keep that in mind, that even if they, I'll use the tall blondes as an example. Most of them, like 99.9% of the ones that interact with humans have been amazing, very spiritually advanced, beautiful creatures. But there's definitely ones out there that are not. So it's and even within their order, again, shit happens. So yeah, I don't think that just because they are a dragon is a good reason to not trust them. Is the dragon bloodline those who have become heightened conscious beings? They would like you to believe that. The bloodlines that they consider to be dragon bloodlines are obviously highly Asian, Chinese. They have just different religious traditions. So that type of thing fits really well with the part of the structure that exists within those countries. Because they are, I guess, a little bit more consciously heightened than their counterparts in the West. China didn't really completely get rid of all of its mysticism, whereas the US kind of has tried to. So I guess that would indicate the difference there. Hopefully that answers that question. What part does Sirius play? What part of Sirius? Sirius A, B, or C? Pick one. Syrian beings have had beings from that constellation have had quite a bit of contact with Earth, especially during what we call like the Egyptian era of Earth. That's why we see a lot of them represented during that time, such as the Anubis. So I think that's a deep question. I don't know how to give one answer for. They've had a lot to do with us, I guess, in certain ways. During ancient times, we did have, ETs come present themselves as gods and teach us various lessons. None of that happened without Draco consent and control, but they were able to use their image here. And so that's why we've got that concoction, especially during the Egyptian era of bird-headed people and dog-headed people, and all those different things are all there because they were all kind of here at the same time. The Orion reptilian they spoke about earlier would have been too. That's why the pyramids are aligned the way that they are. Things like that. Yeah, I think that answers that question. Was that interview real? No, it was not. Luana, it was not. It was very similar to the Law of One and a lot of channeled material where it was like deliberate disinformation into the alternative community. Therefore, there's a lot of facts within it. There's a lot of truth within it. There's a lot of validity to it, and it's actually really worth listening to, especially because it kind of, when you do recognize the differences, it's a good way. It's a good lesson in how that type of disinformation works, just like the law of one is. So. Do they have connection with source as we humans have? I'm guessing you're asking about reptilians there. I wrote a blog on the Whole World Laughing blog, I think it was, where I talked about how there's a kind of divide between whether consciousness is a genetic thing or kind of exists within the mind, or whether it's something that's attached to the soul. And a lot of reptilians fall into the category of they believe that consciousness is something that's attached to the mind, and that's why they believe they learn a lot about genetics and life extending technologies. They use clones and things like that for that reason, because they don't want that body, that host body, to die, because they believe that who they are exists within that brain. So even when they're kind of body swapping, they think that they're just moving that consciousness from that brain into the other brain, which makes sense, because when you go through the process, that's kind of how you visualize it working. So I understand why they stick to that conclusion. But so it's not to say that they don't have that connection. It's that their awareness of the connection, they are placing onto it a fundamental mistake, in that they think that it's here as opposed to here, and so they can benefit from the metaphysical possibilities of that connection. They just think that it's coming from a very different place. And that's why they develop things like soul trap technologies, because it allows them to make sure that they can control that consciousness and bring it back without having to worry about the variability of it being caught up into something like source or our idea of a wheel of incarnation that they're not in control of. So, and there you go. Turtles, snakes, etc. seem to gravitate towards a person. Can that mean anything other than they are just attracted to that person somehow? Well, yes, like a lot of the time, I think that nature's kind of trying to whisper to us all, like, what our connection to it is. And that's why you see like animals so fascinated by little kids. I think they kind of realize that connection to them is open. Maybe they're hearing the kid, and that might be true for an animal coming up to someone like you, is that they might be able to feel you, because you have at least that much of the connection open already, and they might be trying to, encourage that connection with you, not just your connection with them, but your connection to other things. So yeah, that's kind of why. It can just be, they can just be curious, but I I think that there's a lot more to it than that, because it's an energetic thing. It's like dogs don't like shitty people, right? And a lot of animals tend to avoid people altogether. So I think if an animal is kind of going out of its way to greet you, then it's obviously seeing something in you that is safe and goes against their better instinct to avoid you. The origin of Greek gods. It's the same thing as any other religion. A lot of the characters within the myths, again, the name is usually a title, but even if it's not, a lot of the time when they started, they were played by ETs. Like, they were actual ETs that played those roles, and that's why we thought of them as gods, because they had abilities that they were able to present to us as godly. Over time, that might have changed, and eventually a human had that role who didn't have those godly abilities, and maybe when the story got written, that's where they were in time, so it skews. So anytime we're dealing with myths or legends or religions, all of the ones we have available to us all have that same story attached to them, and all have that same skew attached to them, and it's all that draconian skew of giving your power away to gods. So yeah, if I can't really remember all of the specifics of like what each god or each entity within these different religions actually are, or who they actually were, but a lot of the time it ends up being that it was just a title or a name, and the actions of someone were associated to it. So I hope that's enough of an answer for that question. I might do one on myths. I kind of thought about it. Haven't written it out yet, but maybe. Are the different races here based on different alien species visits? Sometimes, yes. This planet's gone through a bunch of cataclysms after the most recent one. Let's say there were a lot of donations. A lot of other, what we call ET species, had brought different life forms here and kind of donated them to Earth, if you will. That's why we have, I'll use an example. That's why we have, like, say, a orange tiger and a white tiger. One was from here, and I'm like, and someone was like, hey, we've got one of those too, but it's white, so we'll just drop that off there. Different things like that had happened during a particular point in time. So to answer your question, yes, it kind of does come from that. Obviously, a lot of it, has been here for a very long time and evolved in its own way, what we call biological evolution. But a lot of it started with and has been added on to over time by what I consider to be donations from ETs. There's always a small truth in every lie. That is very true. Are you optimistic regarding our current trajectory? Where do we stand at this point in your estimation? Yes, I'm very optimistic about where we end up, where this is all leading, and what the result of that will be. That said, if I ever seem like I'm not, it's because I know we've got a long way to go to get there, and we've got a lot of growing pains we're going to have to work through. So maybe just to explain what you might be perceiving as my own attitude towards those things. That's why. It's just because especially if it were a couple of years ago, because today wouldn't have happened yet. We wouldn't be at this place today in the world yet, and I knew that this was coming, and this is a big fucking deal. We're dealing with a lot of bullshit right now, and this is kind of like a rebirth for us all in a way, regardless of any type of agenda. So I knew this was coming. I was kind of waiting for it, and so I had this particular attitude that was very noticeable in anything that I ever wrote or said 2 or 3 4 years ago. That was based on we hadn't got to today yet. And now we're at today, and I still have this attitude because I'm hurting. Like, I'm hurting for us all, and that's coming through in my apparent hopefulness or lack thereof. But it's just, again, it's not that I'm not hopeful. I'm very much aware of the hurdles we're going to have to go through in order to get there. Within my lifetime, that's more of a focus than that end result I do see being positive. So I kind of maintain my focus on that. And yeah, so I guess that answers your question. It's gonna get a lot darker before it ever gets brighter, but it will. And this isn't going to ever have been in vain. So keep fighting the good fight. Is the organic portal theory correct? I'm not sure I know exactly what that theory is. Organic portals, and I mean, portal is a interesting word. We use organic portals to travel from space to space, body to body. So I'm not sure I can answer that question properly. I think I need more clarification. Email me or something with a full answer or full question, and I'll see if I can do better for you next time. What is a good example or a way to gather and retain energy, cosmic, planetary, our own, and ensure we decide how it is used instead of it being siphoned off of us? Imagination is a very big component to everything. Start there. Start with imagining as you're doing your meditation or whatever it is you're doing to generate the energy. Imagine that there's, just as you would put a ball around yourself, say for protection, put a ball around yourself to keep that energy in. Hold it and let it kind of gather within your bubble, within your space, within your orb, and just don't let it go out. And then at some point in time, maybe when you're done your meditation or your dance or whatever it is that you're doing in order to generate that energy, again, sit quietly, visualize all of that energy coming back into your chakra system. And then you'll start to see all your chakra points start to light up and go crazy and everything else. While I've said that, we've got that in our mind and that ability and how that energy is all working. I'll teach you the heart EMP, which is a very good thing to do for protection. It gets rid of nanotechnology to some extent and just kind of clears frequencies around you. So we're here. We're generating the energy, all the connections. We've got this torsion field going on. We've created this bubble to hold the energy where we want it, and now we've got it, right? So all this energy. Start visualizing, pulling that in and up, down and up through your chakra points back into your heart chakra. Hold it in there. It gets hard to do, but hold it in there. Squeeze it in there. Condense it as much as you can. Bring it to as small of a point as you can. Just imagine like Big Bang Theory. You want to get it back to that almost nothingness point. And once you're there, explode it in every direction. Just let it go. Once it's back up for 1 second, while it's there, set an intention. I almost skipped the most important part. My bad. Set an intention. What do you want to do with that energy? Do you want to clear your field of any negative energies, entities, nanotechnology, those type of things? Do you want to shoot love out around? Do you want to direct it into one thing? Then you set your intention. You've got your will in place, and then at that point in time, just let go. Boom. EMP. Visualize that. You've seen it in movies. That sound, that visual. Do that, and it will clear your field of just about anything. Just about anything. You have to repeat the step a few times, but it's a very, very powerful thing to do. Yeah, I think it was Chloe who gave me the word heart EMP, but I almost did a whole podcast. I think I had it recorded, but I never put it out, just explaining that. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to go through that right here. And I do encourage anyone to practice with that idea. Is Jesus from Sirius B? The consciousness, Christ consciousness comes, I don't know if it's Sirius B or not. Sirius. So I don't know if I have that answer. Sorry. Is this the choice point for organic humans? My motto has been get comfortable being uncomfortable. Yes. I guess going to this is a personal belief. I believe that those of us who've chosen this time, this body form, this war, have done so because we believe that we can influence it. We want to experience it. We want to see how it plays out. Soul trap technology excluded. All incarnations are choice. So, yeah. If you're a soul who hadn't dealt with a human body like this one, then this would be quite the challenge. And, I don't know about you, but I like to challenge myself. So I would imagine that there's lots of souls out there who would also like to challenge themselves, and this is a great place to do it. So, yes, to your question. Do you have rep friends that they guide you in some way or protect you? Huh. So if we want to go into this at a soul level, two different types of reptile. So I guess the answer to that would be yes. As human Shane, not so much. I've actually, not to say that I don't have rep friends as Shane, but I have a lot of rep enemies as Shane. So yeah, there you go. Any information of VOG or RNW? I'm not sure what those are. Voice of God, that's what that probably is. voice of God. It's old technology at this point in time, but they still use it. 5G network is going to make it a lot easier for them to use it. They've expanded on it now where they can just put you in a whole psychological simulation from that distance if they want to do that. I'm not sure what the RNN is. If you want to type that one out for me, I'll come back to it. Are the DUMBs being cleared? When the Draco were leaving, they cleared a bunch of theirs. That was registered in the mainstream as a bunch of like 10-kilometer under the Earth's surface explosions or earthquakes that were going on around the time. A lot of different bunkers or bases, I guess, DUMBs that were used for different things have had to be closed. Obviously, they're setting up for an endgame type scenario and need to pool the resources, make it less likely that we ever find anything in the future after said changes are implemented. So yes, a lot of them are being cleared. Not in the way Q would like you to believe that they are. Although I did see in the news today, which made me pretty fucking happy, that our police, local police, Toronto police, I can't remember the numbers, but it was somewhere around 400 people charged 400 children saved in a child pornography ring. So all of the awareness that we're bringing, and I'll even give Q its credit for perpetuating so much of its own bullshit in that regard that people started thinking about it, or at least questioning it, is starting to pay off into the collective consciousness as well. This particular operation was in place for years, so it's not they actually delayed the arrests because of the coronavirus, so it's again doesn't play into your QAnon theories, but it is still a very good thing. And we're going to see a lot more of that happen, so yay. I think that's, yeah. Anywho, a lot of us have issues accepting that we've chose to be here. This is a really hard thing to do, and it's really easy to forget why we're doing it. And it's really difficult to remember that choice. So I feel you. Who's behind Q? Names, I can't name names. There's, can it be suffice to say that I don't buy it? Yeah, it's might as well be them. That way I haven't actually said it out loud. Does the simulation include virtual reality along with mind control? Which simulation? But yes, have you seen the movie The Matrix? Obvious how that worked. In our particular simulation, it's an echo of what we lived through, which we see in the world right now. The Draco control system, this passover to the Illuminati, its submission to technology and artificial intelligence. Yes, this is all. We chose it the first time because we were under my control. So therefore, the answer to your question is yes. Is the black goo part of their religion? It'll probably be part of the next one. Liquid metal technologies. Yes, it's in the fact that they've kind of worshipped or followed religions that were based on aliens. They have followed religions or worship things that are based on AI, and AI utilizes black goo as do aliens, then yes, the answer to that question has to be yes. No direct, like Leku is just a tool, really. So it's no direct, I guess. But yeah, that sums that up. What are your thoughts on a name I can't pronounce and the eighth sphere? Sorry, I'm not sure what you're speaking about. It does not ring anything in my memory right now. Anyways, I might have to Google that. What do you think Q's agenda is? What is he up to? Same thing any kind of disinformation is. It's a lot of it will end up making conspiracy theories look crazy. It's distracting. It's making people make poor decisions and creating a lot of extra noise. So yeah, that's just what disinformation is there for. It's to confuse you more. It's to make it all harder to understand. All that kind of stuff. Off topic, a local group in my community are talking about accepting or rejecting the latest vaccine, and a large portion will refuse, and that is a great sign. Exactly. I've been talking a lot about how we need to pull our head out of our own alternative community asses and look at the rest of the world to see how the world is waking up, and that's an example. Yeah. A lot of people have been coming to me who have heard me talk about these things over years, but don't really ever engage me in these conversations because they don't believe them. Kind of figuring this all out on their own, probably because of all of the bullshit in the media about the coronavirus and how it has all, not been adding up, and things have been proven to be lies, and they're doing shit like wheeling dummies into hospitals and calling them coronavirus, and they're getting caught, and all of this stuff is happening, and nobody can deny it anymore. It's not some crazy conspiracy theory. It's there on the news, and it's having a good effect, and a lot of people are kind of figuring this out. And like what I was talking about earlier about like our natural reaction to reject these things, that's what's coming out in people right now. All the people who are actually of love and aren't just going to fall into that fear frequency are being kind of rewarded with the awareness of, this is bad, don't do this, and you can stand up to this right now, you can change this right now. This is one of those moments in human history where we are actually standing up for ourselves, and it's actually fucking working. And we're utilizing this tool of the internet in such a way that it's actually working out to our benefit, and working against them. We got to keep it up. We got to keep it up, and because it is working. Changes on both sides of the fence, and I've said it all along, a lot of these changes are going to be good, at least for the immediate now. It's just about navigating, it's about balancing. Sorry if this is inappropriate to ask. I see vibrations everywhere all the time. What sort of energy could it be? Why some of us see that? There's all sorts of energies all over the place. How you perceive them is dependent on various levels of your perception. I'm not exactly sure. Like, just seeing things vibrate is probably because, it's just happening, right? Like, what's causing the split right now is vibrational or energetic in nature. And so what's probably happening with you and other people that you're talking to is your like physical eyes are actually picking up on the fact that everything is vibrating right now. Everything is, well, it's always vibrating, but it's vibrating rapidly right now because it's in a time of change. And when I talked about the galactic energy passing through, it's like on the back half of it, and so the effect is kind of like if you hit a drum You get your immediate like boom, but there's still a slight amount of vibration left there, or maybe something like a Tibetan bowl and that ringing out effect. So that ringing out effect is probably just being picked up by your eyes. Um, and but I don't know for sure. It could be multiple things. That's just my best guess if this is something that's kind of recent for you. It could also be recent for you because you're waking up a little bit more. You've developed a new connection, and this is a new line of sight for you, and you just have to learn how to balance it yourself. And it's going to show you or reveal new things to you. It could also be that. So the government can never tell us the truth about aliens or what the government has done. Yeah, that's not in the cards. I mean, it'll never be all of them that did it. It'll just be them throwing select people under buses from time to time. Do I have any of your music posted and where? A few different places. There's a couple acoustic songs on this channel, I think. I've got a channel called Lights for the Dark. That is a bunch of like meditation, just music I've made with virtual instruments and Pro Tools. A couple acoustic things. I sang for a couple bands. Both of them have YouTube channels and Spotify and Apple Music or iTunes, all that. Unraveling Music or the Mind site. So yeah, that answers that question. I had a vision that the end game is about balance, us with reps. Is it plausible? In society, over the last several years, a lot of things are changing. There's been a lot more social acceptance of things like homosexuality and races and all of that different stuff that was keeping us separated. All of that is good, right? So, would it not also be good if we couldn't learn how to coexist with, our enemies, or maybe people that we don't particularly like or see eye to eye with? Balance in every sort of way is the key right now. Within us as individuals, us as a collective, the planet and its energy. It's our responsibility to balance all of this shit, and a big part of that will be letting go of the kind of bullshit that comes from the generalities I was talking about earlier with reptilians and with tall blondes and with any of these. That type of those type of generalizations also work towards us separating ourselves from them and refusing to work with them. Because we're in a situation right now where everybody who's above us is actually human, we actually have an opportunity to reason with them. We actually have an opportunity to level with them. That's why things like what we're seeing right now with people standing up against the government is actually happening, is because we're on a level playing field now. And so with that other understanding of it all being about balance, we need to start dropping those biases. And like it's essentially like hating reptilians because of what the Draco did is racism, and put simply, we need to stop that. And even in terms of dealing with our enemies or people that we don't typically get along with, we're saying a lot to the future of mankind by resolving things, by resolving problems, by figuring out a problem in a relationship. And even if you still have to part ways at the end of it, doing so in a way that you're both happy and content clears that energy so that it's not going to be carried into the future and into the collective consciousness. So any opportunity you can find right now to balance anything is going to play into the future of humanity. And that is one way to do it. Do fairies and other elementals stories have any alien connections? Or are they Earth native? Both. There's a lot of those entities, like fairies specifically, very much Earth-based. Like they were born, evolved, created here. So both. It's a lot of different stories in there, and if you were just kind of take them even super literally, it would be more healthy than trying to connect them all into alien or Earth. But a lot of it, yeah, Earth. earth-based entities, fairies and brownies and various earths type spirits that people connect with, be it through like ayahuasca or hanging out in the forest or um, just having the eyes to see, if you will. A lot of that is earth-based. Archons are earth-based. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's just natural here. It's not all brought to us from outside. What do you make of the clip of the Pope appearing to be holographic image being posted? I haven't seen it. They have really good holographic technology. We see holograms on TV a lot more than we think we do. Wolf Ray, I understand that. If you have my email me. The next podcast after this one, I'm going to just answer a bunch of questions that have been piling up. So if you want to ask me some questions that way, I'll make sure that I get to them. And then when you watch the replay of the next one, you will have all of those answers. Thank you for bearing with it, even though your internet connection clearly sucks and keeps you behind us all the time. You're here with us in spirit, and we all appreciate it. So I'll just ask, how are things in your life at the moment, Shane? How are you actually? I've had a rough week. So many different areas of my life, I've just been having people reach out to me that don't typically. A lot of them breaking down because of what's going on right now. And just some people I haven't spoken to in a long time. One of my bandmates say last night, I am operating a human body at the end of the day. I'm only human. I only have so much energy. So I think I got a little bit drained between that and just the interference because of the topic that I chose last time, I guess. And a mistake I made in what I was saying. I've kind of made for a rough week, but I feel pretty good. It's been rough, but I feel good about it actually, because it hasn't really affected me in the way that it has in the past. I haven't, my emotions have been clear, my head's been clear, all that kind of stuff. I've been able to quickly compartmentalize and respond to everything as it happens. It's just been a lot. So I think that answers the question. I'm good, and I appreciate you asking. Archon are Earth-based, yes. In the creation of any planet, there's always got to be a counterforce to light, dark, if you will. Archon as entity were kind of developed on any given planet in order to be that initial dark side. So on any planet, their Archon were their first enemy. And then other enemy can come along later when their planets get invaded and stuff like that. Or they can create them themselves, but enemies maybe not the right word, but that's, yeah. They're influencers, and every planet has them. So I wanted to talk a bit about the movie Jupiter Ascending, because it's, I guess, part of the reptilian topic that we've been talking about all day. Draco are illustrated in that in an almost comical way on purpose. If you imagine the Draco writing that movie in order to mislead us one more time before they disappeared, you'll get why the Draco in that movie are like foot soldiers being used, and they seem really stupid and everything. It's almost like they're trying to downplay their own image to us. And at the same time, they're giving a huge fuck you to a particular species or race that they don't like, that go by the name of Praxis, that are humanoid. And so they made the Abraxas the bad guys in that movie, as a kind of fuck you on the way out, which I always thought was super cute. And they also exposed the Abraxas as what they are, which are a harvesting species. So you can organically harvest, or you can energetically harvest. The Draco are energetic harvesters. They take the loosh from us, which is an energy. The Abraxas are genetic harvesters, so they actually break down physical things into a substance that they use. If you watch Jupiter Ascending, it kind of illustrates that for you. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I can't remember what they even called it. But they're essentially showing you like the idea of like vampirism through an energetic exchange. And in the movie, the way they put visualization to it was once they came to the planet and did their harvesting, it kind of like took all of the people and turned them into this like kind of like a blue powder that they can then collect. That's the Draco showing you what Abraxas do, because they're like that. Now, why do I think this is relevant to talk about? That planet that we call Nibiru is where the Abraxas come from. The Abraxas had controlled the Draco at one point in time, just like the Draco control us. And they had run many, many series of harvesting events on the Draco, much like the Draco ran many, many harvesting events on us, with each of their respecting harvesting manners. So, based on time, they should be pretty close to us. And based on some of the craft that people have told me about seeing in the last little while, they've been doing a little peeking. And in a way, this talking about reptilians was kind of inspired by that thought, because they look like you and I. Out of all of the extraterrestrials that look like humans, they are the closest to our version of human that there is. One could be sitting in front of you and you wouldn't know. And that presents a danger if they're visiting here, because they could influence you, and none of us want that. So something to be on the lookout for. I had a homeless lady telling me about talking to her daughter one day, and then her daughter taking off a mask, and it wasn't her daughter at all, it was a guy, and she thanked her for the research and walked away. And it made me start thinking about this subject. So I wanted to go through that. I suggest people watch that movie. There's all kinds of information, and it's kind of fun. The acting is fucking horrible, especially the goddamn chemistry between the two main actors. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. But definitely worth a watch. And we'll play on a lot of the different things I talked to you about today. So there you go. What do you know about Lilith? Is she a rep queen? Lilith is a name, a title. Again, the original Lilith, I can't even make sense of anymore. To be honest, I've heard it's a good one. I've heard it's a bad one. They throw it back and forth. I can't remember from my memory outside of here which is the actual truth. But it's a title. Can I get away with saying this? Lady Gaga? Lilith? No. Anyways, I think that's the best answer to that question I can give you. She was at one point in time definitely reptilian. Especially at one point in time she was interacting with us here. But I don't know what that would be buried in, so I don't know where to tell you to look for that. Abraxas, Abraxas. Spelling. Beware of the next saviors. Beware of all saviors. You know, someone should be asking you questions, not telling you what's up. Someone should be asking you questions that lead you to what's up. If your teacher's not doing that, they're playing a savior for you. They're not trying to teach you. Yeah, there's in terms of the actual Abraxas, there's nothing like that's why I know it's such a huge fuck you to them. The fact that their name made it into that movie, because a lot of the times the real names don't get used. Movie, very blatantly, real names got used, and yeah. Any way to begin to recognize them? I think it's just a bit the same as recognizing any other dark entity within a person. You just be aware. Yeah, I don't really have a trick. I don't know. There's no tell. It's kind of again why if there was a big tell, I wouldn't feel the need to bring it up. So, you particularly, person answering me the question, I have a feeling you would be able to tell. So just keep that. It's just important in general for us to be very feeling right now and like really discerning and really careful in everything that we're doing, and all of these choices that we're making are very, very, very important. So we have to treat them delicately, even if they seem trivial. We have to be very careful because karma is a real thing and it is a mirror. And yeah, thank you very much, Jax. Appreciate that. Stay anchored to your inner Morse core. Yes, make sure you're connecting with mom every day. You can. All the same stuff I've been saying. Like all this is very, very important. You know, it's as much as there's a physical aspect of this playing out that we're all seeing. This is a spiritual thing, and all those choices you're making, they all boil down. If you really look at them, like every choice you're making right now is boiling down to love and fear. And if you're making fear-based choices, it's a little bit of a part of yourself you're giving up. So I suggest really watching yourself and stay connected. Yes. Greetings, Modwiz. Good to see you, brother. These Abraxas beings aren't fond of us. They would really like to own us, but that's not allowed anymore. It's not that they're not fond of us. I'm sure they have their own fascination. Yeah, there's no real ill will. I'm not really worried about them. I just think it's something to be aware of. They're not going to do anything. But anyways, yeah. If karma is a real thing, how do those at the top of the pyramid avoid it? Oh, karma isn't like an instant thing, first of all, and it's not a punishment. The choices that we pay for bad karma, if you will, can happen gradually over time, and a lot of them we carry over into the next life depending on the severity of them. So I mean, if it's something simple, then you might see it play out a couple months down the road. But if it's something big, you're probably not going to see it until your next lifetime. So with a lot of the people at the top of those pyramids, they're actually making that bargain where they're like, yeah, I'll deal with this, but not now. And for now, I can just enjoy the carrot and then deal with the problems of it all later. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. I'm afraid my sister might be confusing timelines. I don't think that happened, or I am, or that will happen, or I am. I guess if it happens, we're all gonna fucking know about it. So it's a possibility. talked about like plans that were out there. At one point in time, there was this plan to throw planets at each other. I don't see that happening. I might be wrong. I don't think I am. Time will tell. There you go. I'm not as angry as I was when I first met you years ago. Progress, I guess. Good. Yes, that is definite progress, and that's kind of what it's part of why I do it. Like it's why I laugh at it. That's why I'm smoking bongs doing it, because I don't want it to be taken so fucking seriously that we're ruining our lives over it all and getting angry about it all. Like, we have to put this all in its place, and we have to live life, and we have to do the best that we can. And that means being able to keep your focus where it should be. And if this gets too heavy, then it'll dominate too much of your focus. And it's like if things are too dark, you can't see. If things are too light, you can't see. You need balance. It's what I hope to be able to do. So you telling me that is a big thank you, and thank you for that. What do you think about Saturn symbolism? Well, it all comes from the cults of Saturn, of which there are many. Hard to say where that all boils down to, because it kind of permeates through a bunch of things. I think the biggest representation of it now is like media, like things like Hollywood, music, that kind of stuff. Those are all Saturn-based cults. All these cults serve individual purposes as well as fit into the bigger purpose of, control structures. So I think that answers all of that. It's just one component. It's like a cog in a wheel, or one part of a machine that has been the dominating control system of our planet. There was the moon, Saturn, us connection at one point in time, which was like a digital overlay type matrix, but that got broken. That's a lot of why that emphasis on the Saturn-based cults, and why we use like Satan and all of that so predominantly, is because that used to be a big deal. That was all coupled in with the soul technology, and that was all related to the Draco. And because the Draco aren't here, that's not relevant anymore. But I answered your question all the same. Now come give me a tattoo already. I'm kidding. Kind of. Snitches get stitches. Yeah. So I'm being shown. Numerology, I don't know much about. My brain and numbers don't get along well. It's a form of ritualistic magic, essentially, is being able to pay attention to those things, and it has to do with alchemy and the building blocks of the holograph, or the organic hologram. That's why things like the Fibonacci sequence exist. I just personally don't know a lot about it. I just understand how it fits into the other structure, and it's just not something I've learned with any sort of discipline to utilize. It's a tool, so it's not necessarily a distraction. There's a lot of kind of disinformation mixed in with the information, I would imagine, if you're studying that stuff. So, like there is with anything else, it's just one of those things you'd have to navigate carefully. But trust yourself. I wouldn't throw it out, though, just because it has been manipulated and is most prevalently used to manipulate us. If they're using a tool, it's because it's a powerful tool, right? And whatever they use, we can use for ourselves. Our intentions will make it okay. Added your question, and they fear us. I forget what the first half of your question was there, Sue. Let me scroll up for a second. Oh, where did it go? It was right there. Are we in full knowing who we are, more powerful, spiritually connected than these Abraxas beings? Yes. Okay, I'll just say this. If we can do what I've said, if we can balance this human form, if we can balance all of the energy that it's capable of creating, this human form could become the most powerful form, definitely within our galaxy and possibly anywhere ever so far. That's saying a lot. And that's why I keep fucking banging on that responsibility drum, because with great power comes great responsibility, and you are all playing with a goddamn lot of power. It's like having a sports car and being a shitty driver, you know? It's you have the fastest car on the fucking planet, but you don't know how to drive, and you can just back it out and you potter around the lot with it or whatever, the town, city, whatever. Take it to go grocery shopping when really you could be racing that fucking thing. That's kind of where we're at. We're driving race cars that we're puttering around on a Sunday drive with, and like sightseeing along the way, which is all cute, but there's a lot more potential there. So. Is it true that the rep's trying to find an entity to higher dimensions, an entry to higher dimensions through us, maybe? No. Well, I guess you could think of it that way, because they were really using us to study emotions, and emotions are, in a way, entry to higher dimensions or different dimensions. Higher and lower are human-based concepts. Lower doesn't necessarily mean worse. Higher doesn't necessarily mean better. In fact, in terms of vibration, a higher vibration simply means that you're moving faster. And if you really wanted to be chill, wouldn't you want to slow down a bit? Just saying. A lot of disinfo in the hippie movements, new age movements. Were human at some point able to fly? This version of human, no. No. This version of human, no. A really ancient one could. It's a long time ago now, though. I think we could probably figure that out. Something that I know I don't talk much about in terms of the potential within us. If you've seen the TV show Heroes, they presented that as like an evolution. That's not wrong. Those abilities are within humans. And eventually we will get there. So I think that's the best way to answer that question. They know, but we could, but we don't really have to right now. We're in no type of place where we need to. There's so many other steps before we get to a place where we need to be a physical vehicle that can fly. Let's put it that way. You got to learn to walk before you can run. We're going to have to learn how to walk before we can fly too. Seems like so many alien species have a financial, for lack of a better term, investment, not for the good. Yeah, that's true. The universe as a whole, like, there's going to have to be light and dark. Otherwise, it gets stagnant. I mean, someone's got to be the good guy and someone's got to be the bad guy. And yeah, it's just the way that it is. And the bad guys need an incentive to be bad. Wherever that incentive comes from, people need incentive to do bad things. You don't really need an incentive to do good things. It feels good on its own, right? Doing bad things doesn't necessarily, well, I guess sometimes it can, especially if you're a thrill seeker, but it doesn't necessarily feel good on its own. It's the reward that you get on the other end of it that makes it worth it. So there you go. Isn't it about controlling vibration, not necessarily about increasing vibration? Exactly. That's exactly it. And that's why I said, like, there's good and bad to higher and lower vibration. Higher isn't always better, lower isn't always bad. They're different frequencies that you need to access in order to get different types of things out of. And therefore, learning how to control your vibration is exactly what you need to do. You need to be able to move higher and lower on command, not because of environmental or emotional factors or response patterns. So yes, thank you for asking that question. You are exactly right. We need to get busy. Yes, a lot of us have been busy for a long time, but it's showtime. Are the primordial dragons coming back, or are we the primordial dragons? The universe is a really big place. Where we exist within it is what would be thought of as a younger part of it. Primordial dragons would prefer to stick to the older parts of it. So there's no reason or need for them to come back here. This is all people, baby. Just suck it up and deal with it, all right? Stop asking for ETs, dragons. Fucking, I don't care what you want. You're not getting it. You're humans. We're all humans. This planet is run by humans. Humans need to learn how to be human and be a better human and learn how to move humanity into a human future without all of this bullshit. Whether the bullshit is the good side or the dark side. Humans, we need to focus on us. We've never had that opportunity. And when we didn't get that opportunity, we fucked up. So let's give ourselves that opportunity. You know, it's pretty and it's sexy to have Big Daddy Ellie and AT come in, dragons come back, fix everything for us. It's not gonna happen. I'm half joking. I'm not actually angry. And I appreciate your question, Jared. Greetings, brother. Good to see you here. It seems that way, Jax, is the Fibonacci sequence, the true pattern. Yes. Again, I don't focus much on numbers because it doesn't work very well with my brain. I think of things more in terms of music. But yes, and that's why it's true in music too. So yes. Oh, I wanted dragons. No, next lifetime maybe. Greetings, Quebec. Or Dave from Quebec, I should say. Well, I think we've done it. I'll smoke one more bomb, give it about another 10 minutes or so for you guys to ask any more questions, and then I will wrap it up. This one's been fun. At least it wasn't quite as bad. Hopefully that problem we were having earlier with the static was at least bearable. If not, I'll again keep working for a new solution. The next one I do is going to be just questions. It's I've had a few of you send me questions already, and you're patiently waiting for your answers. And I know I've touched on some of the subjects already, but I will kind of just write out a bunch of questions and just go through a list of questions next time. So I obviously won't get to all of them, but if you guys want to send them to me, now is a good time. I'll be doing that over the course of the next week. I took the whole week off, so I haven't even I had podcasts recorded that I still need to edit. And I had a few booked that I was supposed to record that I ended up canceling. So I'm going to get back to that and finish those and start recording some new ones. So there will be some regular episodes of The Whole World Laughing on its way as well. All right. Oh. Yes, it is awesome being human. People just want to jump it for whatever reason I don't really understand. I love dragons too. So I understand that part of it, yes. I also understand that we all know it's there and we want it, and I do respect that. And I don't mean to downplay that or tell you that you're wrong for wanting that. I'm just trying to bring again the focus back down to what matters the most for us, because now's a time of action. It's not just a time of daydreaming. Not to say imagination isn't important, but that's not what I mean by daydreaming in this regard. I just mean if we need to be thinking about what we want this planet to look like. And if that includes dragons for you, then go ahead and include that. But humans, we're very important. We have a remarkable opportunity. And I just want to see it happen. So there you go. How are things on the astral front? It's always darkest before dawn. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you for. There's been a lot of people. A lot of you. I've been skipping over it. I don't really mean to just skip over it. I don't handle compliments so well, and I'm not looking for them. So I kind of shy away from them when you guys do it. But I also appreciate that you would like to express that to me, and I do hear you, and thank you too. I try and do all of this out of love, even when I sound like I'm angry. So thank you all. I don't know anything about Nova Scotia yet. I may come back to that another day. Interesting numbers, though. 17 was the first report, 17 deaths. Again, I'm not all that abreast on the numbers, but I know what 17 fucking means. And then they jumped it up to 23, which is just hilarious. Just the movie, the number 23. Anyways. All right, guys. Until next week, probably the same day this coming week. If not, just keep an eye out and you will find out. Lots of love and respect. Take care of you all for us, and we will see you next time. Bye.